Hey fellow garage fabbers, you're not going to believe it, but we are working on the Mighty Max today. Oh, it's about time. It may or may not look like it, but I've been spending a lot of time cleaning up the garage lately, and now I actually have access to the front suspension, which is where we were left hanging the last time you saw this truck. So we're going to get the front control arms fully mounted, and also in this episode, the universe reminds me that I'm still not in charge. Now I'm starting this video out with the control arm already attached to the chassis, and what I noticed was when access to this rear bushing passes directly through the front bushing, as it should, it's kind of interesting watching it move. It just kind of looks like this bushing is rotating around an invisible bolt. All right, we got to make some tabs for these front bushings on these control arms, and y'all have seen me do that a few times already, so it's nothing new. But I think what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to slow it down a little bit. Normally I do it in time lapse, but recently I did some grinding and everybody said, hey, I didn't skip a second of that. So I figured maybe slowing this down, you'll actually get to hear my thought process while making these tabs, which might make it a little bit easier for you. So I need to reduce the diameter of this a little bit. I'm hoping I can just hold this just tight enough that it'll allow it to spin in my fingers. Oh, there we go. Nice. And then I can squeeze it to slow it down a little bit. Because if it gets spinning too fast, then this isn't really doing anything. It's just helping to spin it. It's not actually sanding. Nice. We'll call that the finger lathe. That's better. So I got my mock-up bushings in the end of the control arms. We can see that the bushing kind of favors the inside of the frame rail. So we're gonna do the majority of the tab on the inside of the frame rail. We've got the oil filter housing here that we're gonna have to contend with. Probably have to shape some stuff around that. On the driver's side, not so much. We don't have anything to worry about on this side. So that side's gonna be easy. So we're gonna focus on this side. In the past, you've seen me use this stuff. I call it cardstock. I don't actually know what it's called. It's just like a non-corrugated cardboard that's kind of thick, and it's perfect for making templates. But today, I'm switching it up a little bit, and I'm going to use poster board. This poster board in particular, I got from a dollar store. The reason I'm switching it up is because I get this in a hole-in-the-wall upholstery store here in Vegas. I have a lot of people asking me where they can get it. I don't know. Travel to Vegas and go to that little hole-in-the-wall upholstery store. So I'm gonna try this because you can get this at Walmart, or like I said, this was at the dollar store. So it's a little thinner, but I think it's gonna work just fine. So I got this big awkward piece of poster board. I'm gonna cut it down a little bit. And the way I'm gonna do that, this is all gonna be visual guesstimation. I need a little piece that will reach from the top of the frame rail down to the bottom of the bushing. And then it needs to be wide enough to stretch the entire width of the frame rail, and the bushing is set back just a little ways. So I'm just going to guess, and I'm going to cut out a little square that I think is going to be big enough. And let's see here. It's way too wide. That's fine. And the height is about perfect. So I'm going to keep the height, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit. So the height's good. It reaches from the top of the frame down to the bottom of the bushing. The width is way too wide, so I'm going to mark the back of the bushing. Doesn't have to be accurate. You can't see it, but that's fine because I'm just putting a little mark that's right about where the bushing was. And these bushings are going to be adjustable just like they were on the back side of the control arm. So I'm not going to cut right up to that mark. I'm going to give us a little extra so that the bushing can move back and forth. Still no measuring, just guessing. And that looks pretty good. I think that's too much material, but I don't want to cut off too much because I'll have to start over. Now I want to cut a little notch out of here so that it fits the frame. And I'm just gonna mark where the bottom of the frame is. I'm gonna mark where the side of the frame is. And I'm gonna cut out my notch. Pretty sure this frame is square, or actually a rectangle, but I think all the corners are right angles. So that's nice. I'll have to show you in a little bit at a different angle, but this appears to be pretty good. I'm thinking that my right angle is not an actual right angle. That or the chassis is actually not at a right angle like I thought it was gonna be. All right, that's much better. We don't need this giant corner, so I'll probably cut a nice little angle from the top down over here. That's nice. And I'm gonna switch the camera to the other side because this back side looks pretty good. I need you to see the front over here. All right, so on this front edge, or the outer edge of this tab, I have way too much material. I only need like a 1/2 inch, I think. So I'm going to mark about where I want to cut it. I'll also mark the bushing just so you can see it here in a second, because I know you can't see what I'm marking right now. So this is the edge of the bushing, and this is where I think I want to cut it, right there. This actually reached to the outside of the frame, so I think what I actually wanted to do is cut a little angle like that. Yeah, I like that. And then there's a whole bunch of material down at the bottom that I don't need, so I'm gonna mark right at the bushing, which is right there. I'm not gonna cut right up against the bushing. I'm gonna cut down a little bit. And this is unnecessary right now. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm just gonna cut some nice corners in there, 'cause this is more like what this tab is gonna look like. Now I have a feeling this is a bit too wide, but I need the bushing to be able to slide back and forth on this. But to begin with, we're gonna punch a hole in here, right smack dab in the center of the bushing, and then later on we're gonna oval out that hole so that we can make it adjustable. Now there's one more thing I'm seeing that, again, you can't see at that angle. So this tab is looking okay at the moment, but if I put it in place, it's touching the oil filter housing. And this is really flexible cardboard, so it just kind of bends out of the way for me. But this is gonna be 3/16 inch steel plate. It's not gonna bend. So I think what I'm gonna do, I don't really have to trim this. I can leave the bulk of this if I just do exactly what it's trying to do and bend out of the way, like so. Totally clears the oil filter housing, and I have all this piece as like a giant gusset. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fold it right at the base of the frame rail. And there it is. I like that a lot. I've got plenty of room. Getting a tool in there might be a pain in the butt. We can address that later. I'm okay with this right now. This edge is nicely seated up against the inside of the frame rail. The bottom is seated nicely against the bottom of the frame rail. Everything is pushed up against the bushing. I am just going to massage around the bushing. And what this is going to do is this is going to mark the outer diameter of the bushing. And then when I do that, I'm going to push towards the center to try to press in where the hole of that bushing is. I think this is actually going to be where this poster board is better than the cardstock I use, because it's quite thin and I can actually feel the bushing back there. Let's see what my mark looks like. That is awesome. That is so cool. I think I like this stuff better.
Normally I would have to use like a dead blow hammer or something and beat on the side of the bushing in order to make this kind of mark. I'm taking the front part of this cam off because I don't remember how big I need to make this oval. Now I can just measure it, and it is, can't really see, but I think it's 1.25 inches. Ooh, I can't stick my head in there, but I can stick the phone in there so you actually know what the measurement is before I do. I'm gonna have to play this back and figure out what it is. Is it 1.25 inches? All right, so I want to stretch out this hole a little bit so that it's an oval. You probably can't really see it though, so for my sake, for measuring and for yours, I'm going to mark the center. So there's the center, and I want this oval to be level with the ground. So what I'm going to do is, I know that the chassis is level with the ground. So this cut right here is level, and then I will measure down from that line to the center of the hole, which is 3 and what is that, 3/8? 3 3/8. So I'll put it over here and mark 3 3/8. Put it on the other end and mark 3 3/8. And now this is the line that that cam oval will sit on. So this should be perfectly parallel with that. And I learned that that oval is a total of 1.25 inches wide. So I'm going to center 1.25 inches at 1/2 and 3/16, I believe it is. I'm going to check this going backwards also. That's how I make sure that I'm doing correct math. And already to my eyeball, that does not look right. So flip it upside down and do it again. 1 inch, 1/2 and 3/16. Oh, okay. It doesn't look right, but it's spot on. Why does that look so weird? I think what I'm going to do anyways is I'm going to make this oval just a touch bigger than it needs to be, just so that I know that I have full movement of that cam. So there's my cam hole, and I'm doing all this. It kind of doesn't really matter because I'm going to be making this out of wood first. However, when it comes time to drilling this hole in the metal, I'll probably revert back to this one. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of eyeball the center where the bolt will be at both extremes. Meaning when it's adjusted fully this way, there's the center of the bolt. When it's adjusted fully the opposite direction, there's the center of the bolt. And I'm doing that because I'm going to use a mock-up bushing to help me figure out where the edge of the bushing is going to be. So when the bushing is pushed all the way out towards the wheel, it's going to be right there. When the bushing is pushed all the way in towards the engine, the bushing is going to be right there. And this side gives me just a little bit of leftover so that the bushing doesn't smush over the side and it doesn't tear up the bushing as the suspension cycles up and down. This side I have way too much. I kind of want exactly the same amount right there. So I'm going to trim this. You know what? Let's actually trace all the way around the bushing at both extremes. Nice. Now let's match this space all the way around. So we got about 1/8 inch there. We got 1/8 inch all the way around there. Yeah, I like that. Now let's trim that. And I would like a fair amount of material on this edge. So let's trim it right there, and we'll probably round off this corner because that always looks better. Let's cut that out and see what it looks like. There's our tab. All that time and we have one tab and we're not even halfway done yet. All right, let's turn this floppy cardboard template into a nice 1/4 inch thick traceable template. This is 1/4" MDF. The reason I've chosen 1/4" is because the tip of my plasma cutter, the part that's going to drag along this template, is about 1/4" tall. And while this template is in place, I'm going to mark the center of this oval hole.
All right, let's try this guy out. The problem that we're gonna have though is that this tab up at the top doesn't bend like this one does for the oil filter housing, but hopefully we can still get an idea if this is looking good or not.
And it looks to me like it's working real well. There will be a couple small changes, like this doesn't need to be as high, so I can cut that tip off a little bit. It feels like it's centered on the bushing. Really happy with that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill a hole in this and see if I can get a bolt through there. Because even though I can't get it to rest flat on the bushing, it's still really close to where it needs to be. It's all the way against the frame on the side. It's all the way against the frame on the bottom. So in theory, the bolt hole should be in the right spot, even if this isn't bent out of the way. Yeah, let's drill a hole. Very nice. That's cool. Let's make this out of metal. But before we take the time to bust out the plasma cutter and unravel the cord, get the plasma table out, I want to be ready with all the parts we need to plasma cut. So we're going to do the rear tab for the front bushing, but this time, because you know how I do it, we're going to do it a little quicker. Well, I'm changing the design of this tab before I even finish. So the front tab, if you remember, had a little piece that stuck up in the back. I like to design my tabs whenever possible to have contact with the frame at 2 different points. So I got some on the back side and then some on the bottom side right here. That's how I like to do them. But I can't put this piece in the back because the oil filter housing, it's just not an option. And I didn't want one in the front because I didn't want it to potentially hit the tire when the wheels were turned. So I was just going to put it on the bottom of the frame, which I think would be okay, really, but it just goes against what I normally like to do. So then I realized that if I pull the control arm up, control arm sticks out quite a bit, and I've already dealt with this before as far as clearance for the wheel turning, and there's plenty. So I could actually make the rear tab stick out in the front quite a bit, and it shouldn't hit the tire because it's not going to hit the control arm. So I'm starting over with this one. I'm going to throw this one away, and I'm going to start over with a tab that attaches to the bottom of the frame and then wraps up on the side here. I don't usually show both sides because it gets pretty tedious seeing the exact same thing, just reversed. But today, it's not exactly the same thing because I just tried the templates that I made for the passenger side. I tried them on the driver's side and they don't quite fit. I mean, they're close. They're really close. But if I line up the hole, this template is about 1/8 of an inch too far down. And man, you can't see it, but it almost seems like the frame rail is twisted. Now, I'm not super shocked because, I mean, the way I've built this entire thing hasn't been super precise. The way I did the Z and we narrowed the frame, that wasn't super precise. The control arm jig, I feel like that is about as precise as it gets. I mean, a machinist wouldn't say it's close. The way I positioned the rear bushings on the front control arms, that wasn't super precise either. So I'm not shocked that it's a little off. But what I'm trying to do right now is think through in my head if I care. I mean, is it gonna cause problems? I mean, this is kind of the entire reason why I wanted to do the adjustable bushings in the first place. So all my inaccuracies put together, I would be able to just put it on the alignment rack and, you know, move stuff around a little bit to make up for all my inaccuracies. And that reminds me, it's kind of the first time that I've been slightly depressed about losing my job. It's been absolute heaven not being there, but when I first started building this thing, I had access to a really nice alignment rack. And so I just envisioned when I finished this thing, pulling it up on the alignment rack and being able to do my own alignment. I don't have that option anymore, at least at the moment. So that's kind of sad. Do I wish I was still there? Absolutely fucking not. Now I'm trying to just figure out if I should force this control arm to fit these tabs or if I should just modify the tabs to fit the control arm. And I'm kind of leaning towards the latter, just letting the control arm be where it is, because I believe from all the measurements I've done, the ball joint is exactly where it's supposed to be. So in theory, it doesn't really matter where the bushings are. I know that probably doesn't make sense, but man, I'm just winging it. I make it look like I know what I'm doing sometimes, but I do not. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut out all the tabs using the templates that I made on the passenger side, and I'm just going to modify this corner right here on both tabs just a little bit so that the tabs fit the bushing here, just floating in space. And hopefully in the future it won't bite me in the butt. Fully expecting this truck to crab walk down the freeway. So let's see. I gotta put my plasma cutting boots on. Haven't worn these in a while. Hope there's no spiders, scorpions in there. I bought these just for the plasma cutter because, man, you ever get a spark right down the lace holes? These ain't got no laces in them. Folks that have been around for a while have seen me do this many times, but I trim down the sides of my template because this template is going to be what I drag the plasma cutter tip around. The plasma cutter doesn't cut directly up against the template. It cuts 3/16 of an inch away from there. So in order to make a piece that's exactly this size, I need to cut the template itself down 3/16 on all edges. Normally I just use a tape measure or a ruler or something, but I recently got this edge scribe. Hopefully that'll make things quite a bit easier. This edge scribe, by the way, is set to 3/16 right now. So I can scribe a line 3/16 away from the edge here. Then I'm just gonna trim down this template because it's a hell of a lot easier to do than to trim down the metal. And what I'm not going to do normally, it's most important right where the piece is gonna fit up against the frame. But because these aren't fitting exactly the same left to right, I'm actually going to cut this piece out by hand, somewhat. I mean, I'm going to use a template to cut it, but it won't be in the right place because of that 3/16 that we were just talking about. So I'm actually going to trim this to fit the car perfectly after plasma cutting it out. So I am not going to trim 3/16 off of this right now. Well, I just broke this tab off. I don't know what I was thinking there. Cutting with that dangling like that. It's ridiculous. Probably be easier just to make this again, but I'm probably gonna do something stupid like glue it. Yeah, let's glue it. Hey, good news. Caroline just came out, said the house is getting hot and the air conditioner is making noise again. This keeps happening. The AC compressor is like partially locking up and then later on it'll start up again. I've never seen that before, but it's really butt puckering every time because eventually it's not going to start up again and it's like 110 degrees outside right now. We actually have a brand new AC unit in storage, but I'm having a hard time finding people to make stuff for it. So it looks like I'm gonna have to do it myself. That's fun. Just a big headache, but I'm gonna go see what's going on with this right now. See if we can get it started again. Well, she wasn't lying. Sure enough, AC compressor wasn't running, making all kinds of crazy noise. Shut it down for 20 minutes, started it back up, and it was totally fine. No idea what's going on. Maybe it's a capacitor or something, but this unit's like 14 years old, so every time, man, we just freak out. Like I said, got a new unit in storage, but we're kind of hoping for replacing it in the fall when it's a little bit colder, so we don't have to have AC all day, every day, you know? All right, I'm going to mark the hole straight from the template using a transfer punch. Ooh, I think I just called it the correct thing for the first time ever. I always call it a center punch. It just makes more sense. I'm trying to find the center of this hole, and this is going to mark the center. So, a center punch. It just makes sense. But I believe it's called a transfer punch. And this is a 9/16 hole. I don't have a 9/16 transfer punch, so I'm just kind of eyeballing center. Just centering this 1/2-inch punch, which is probably a little bit more accurate than just trying to visually find the center, and that looks really good. I'll make it a little bit bigger with a center punch. I think that's a center punch now. Y'all are out there like, bro has a fabrication channel and he doesn't know what this shit is called. No, I don't. Because I work by myself in the garage and I know what I'm talking about. Now, as soon as I get an employee and I'm like, hey man, go get me the center punch, and he brings me this instead of this, then I guess we got a problem. But whatever. Okay, the tabs are bolted in place, not welded, just the test fit. There's a few more things I want to do before these are permanently attached to the car. And glad I test fit because the passenger side is okay. It's kind of dark, so you can't really see, but there's a little gap in there. Not a big deal. We can weld that. Same with the front tab, little gap. It looks like a big gap, but that's just the corner. It's a sharp corner, the rounded corner of the frame, so it's not that big deal. This side, I think we can weld up pretty good. And I think I want to trim this part of this tab a little bit, cut this back a 1/4 inch or more so that we can kind of rotate this that way. And that's gonna bring the bottom even closer. So not a big deal there at all. On the driver's side, however, thank goodness I added that extra material, because what the heck is going on over here? My gosh, it's like a 1/2 inch. I could put my whole finger in there. Front tab, not so bad. I'm pretty good at welding gaps, so I can probably weld that in. But I think I can get this a little closer as well by trimming this one, just like I said I was going to do on the other side. This one I might trim up to a 1/2 inch, and that will rotate that quite a bit. Just the shape of this tab, if we rotate it that way, it's going to bring this much closer to the bottom of the frame rail. So I'm going to trim this. We're going to see how that works. And the same with this tab here. I'm going to trim a little bit right there and get it to rotate this direction, and hopefully that'll bring the bottom even closer, at least close enough to weld so it doesn't seem so hacky, you know, so that I don't get roasted in the comments for filling up a 1/2 inch gap full of weld. So let's trim these. But while I have them out, I'm also going to weld on some stops for these cams. They're gonna look a lot like that, almost identical to that, but we're gonna do it there. Once those are in place, we're going to oval out those holes that we drilled. Currently it's just a round 9/16 inch hole. These are actually an oval hole, so that when this cam turns, this bolt can slide back and forth. We're gonna do that to these. Then we're gonna weld them in place. I'm going to go off topic for a second here because I'm about to weld on the tabs, but I just remembered that not long ago I tried to put the compressor on, and because I narrowed the frame rails, the compressor, the AC compressor, doesn't fit. And air conditioning is not an option on this build. It's a requirement. So it looks like the tabs completely avoid the compressor, so that's not a big deal. But I decided not long ago that I want to clearance out the frame rail a little bit for the compressor, which is going to be just removing just this top corner just a little bit and plating it in with either some tube or something. I don't know. We'll worry about that later. This video isn't about that, but I have to clean off these welds from the original control arm tabs. But because I need to remove this corner, some of this is actually going to go with it, so it'll save me some time. It shouldn't take long just to hit this with a plasma cutter really quick after I mark what I need to be removed. And we're going to do that, and then we're going to get back onto the control arm tabs. So the tabs are going to be mounted on the inside of the frame rail right here. So I'm going to cut the frame here. And the back of the compressor stops right here. So I'm going to cut the frame here. I think that's good. And then compressor is going to drop down a little bit. The front is almost right where it needs to be. So this piece right here basically just needs to be cut there. I think I'm just going to do a straight line. So let's give another 3/8 of an inch there, and we're just going to go straight back like so. So all be one straight line, because whatever I weld in there is probably going to be a straight piece. All right, cool. Compressor fits. Nice big chunk taken out of the front piece of the frame rail. Just gonna plate that in, but probably not gonna do that on this episode. Looks like these holes on the outside line up with the holes on the compressor. So that's cool. When I plate that in, I'm gonna make sure we have access to these bolts because it is really close. There is no way we're getting those long bolts out once we plate that in. So we're gonna have to get the bolts out through the frame rail. And that's all right with me. Super cool, actually. Back to the control arm tabs, though. So I've been using these shaft keys for these cams, and the last time I did this, I had people in the comments say to remove zinc, to soak it overnight in vinegar. I don't have overnight, but I have been wanting to try that. I'm kind of rushing this part of the project. Not rushing, I just don't want to wait. So I'm just going to put them in here. And I think I will weld up that frame that I said I was not going to deal with in this video. But I'm going to give these at least an hour, and then maybe it'll at least show like signs that it's working so that I can try it overnight one day. So let's come back to this in a little while and see if it looks like it's doing anything. Oh my. Oh. Oh, that's nice. Well, that's not good. That's my hats. Luckily they're in bags. Well, that's fun. Awesome. Finish my cereal and then I'll handle it.
What is it?
Oh, that's awesome. The flange on the top of the tank broke off. This thing is not that old, I don't think. Cool. I got a box of random stuffed soup, including a mini truck frame that I built for suspension videos. Oh, this is awesome. I don't even remember what's in here, but it's in there because I wanted to keep it for whatever reason. Well, I learned something, unfortunately, meaning I wish I didn't learn it, but I can pay it forward and potentially help you guys out. If you are storing anything near a source of water, like a water heater, water softener, or any sort of pipes or whatever that can give up, make sure that thing that you're storing is not able to hold water. I'm not saying don't store by your water heater, but make sure if it gets wet, it's okay, and the water can just drip off of it. Do not store something that can hold water, like tubs. This tub is full of parts that I stole from the Mitsubishi Eclipse for the Mighty Max. So I guess you could say that these are all Mighty Max parts. Because this had a lid on it, I thought it was safe, but I took a peek in there with a flashlight. It's full of water. A fuel rail, wipers, something tells me those are okay. A whole bunch of wiring. Got my ignition coils and spark plug wires. Those I'm a little bit more concerned about. Power steering pump should be okay. Miscellaneous wire harness stuff. It looks like that's the majority of the stuff that could have potentially been ruined. Don't store tubs by sources of water. Just don't. Trust me. All right. Well, I decided to call it quits yesterday after clearancing out that frame rail. And so I decided to actually let this stuff sit overnight because it was bubbling and it was kind of obvious it was doing something slowly. But my bottle has inflated. That's cool. It's like a weeble wobble now. And looking at it, I think all the zinc plating is gone. So I'm gonna drain this out and take a look at it. It smells like Easter. Would you look at that? Either all the zinc plating got really dull or it came off. Because this kind of looks like just mild steel now. That's pretty nice. I'm gonna try just welding on that and see if it smokes like crazy like it would if I would have left the zinc on there. Thanks again, internet. I learned the last time that we were doing these cams that this cam is just under 1 7/8 inches. So I need to create 2 little walls or guide plates, I don't really know what to call them, that are about 2 7/8 apart. That gives something for this cam to push up against so that it moves the shaft back and forth, which is how the whole alignment thing works. And what I created last time in order to make this happen lickety-split was I cut a little piece out of a 2-inch piece of flat stock, trimmed 1/8 inch off so that it is 1 7/8 inches. And this is going to be my spacer to help me quickly weld on these things so that they're perfectly parallel, perfectly spaced apart. So all I need to do is clamp these down and weld them on nice and fast. The only problem with that is that I can't see the hole when I put that there, so I'm going to put a mark across that hole. When I oval out this hole, I want it to be level with the ground. This part of this cutout is level with the ground because it's the bottom of the frame rail, so I'm going to put this parallel to that, and I'm going to draw a mark beyond the hole so that I can see when that plate is there. Nice. There it is, and now I can weld these on. And that should be all I need. Man, I am really excited about this vinegar thing. Those of you that suggested to soak zinc-plated parts overnight in preparation for welding, man, I really appreciate it. I started GarageFab just because I kind of wanted to share the way that I do things and pass forward some of the knowledge that I've gained over the years. And what was not expected was to just learn a whole bunch of random things, like soaking zinc-plated metal to remove the plate and make it a hell of a lot less toxic to weld on. So this welded on quite nice. No crazy smoke, no weird residue, and it just looks really nice. So those of you that suggested that, it was several. You guys know who you are. I appreciate you, man. And this is gonna help some other people. Zinc-plated parts. You need to weld on some nuts? Soak it in vinegar overnight. Need to weld on zinc-plated keyway onto stuff? Soak it in vinegar overnight. I'm not sure this is going to work or make sense, so I'm only going to half-ass explain this, but I have decided that the shoulder of this bolt needs to travel about 1 3/8 inches when it rotates 180 degrees. So this measurement from this part of the bolt is 1/8. So if I measure from 1/8 on the other side, which is just on the other side of this kind of half moon thing, that's 1 3/8. So I need to make an oval that's a total of 1 3/8. So I centered the measurement 1 3/8 right over the existing hole. I marked it at 1 3/8 and at 0, so that I now have my mark that is 1 3/8. That's my oval that I need. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the hole from the other tab, the opposite tab, as a guide. I'm going to offset it right with one of my marks and clamp it together. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a guide to cut this hole. But what's cool about that is that I can use the hole on the other side to guide on that side. I will have to do this twice. Guide and another guide. All right, let's see how badly we mess this up. That looks good. And that one looks a little crooked. Is that a big deal? I am not really sure yet. Yeah, I don't like that. Trying to cut corners. Probably shouldn't. I'm just gonna roll with it for now. In a little bit, we're gonna grind off these peaks with the router, with the carbide bit in it. But first we need to cut this other hole, but I would like it to be a little straighter than this. Okay, Not happy with that at all. It is indeed very crooked. But I did find that the spacing away from the stop is perfect, which is a 1/4 inch. So the spacing is fantastic, but it's just super crooked. So I want to try something else. And what I decided to do was the piece of metal that I used to position these stops, I just drilled a hole in it, 1/8 inch away from the edge. And that's going to lock in place. And I think this is going to give me more control over where the hole is positioned, especially because it's got the lines on there still. I got the line underneath still. So this is going to be held in place by the stops and then held down with my locking pliers. And I think this is going to work a lot better. Let's find out. Drum roll, please. Ow, it's hot. Yeah, that's much better. Probably can't even tell, but this one's a little bit too low. I wasn't happy with that. This one is perfect. So I'm just gonna do that repeatedly until all these are done, and then we'll move on to grinding off those peaks. Nice. I like it. I feel like I need to reintroduce this process for new viewers because I haven't done this in a while. This is my little router that I have installed a carbide bit into. The carbide bit is usually meant for a tool like this, a die grinder. This die grinder has a 1/4 inch chuck, and the router has a 1/4 inch chuck. So I was able to just put the carbide bit into the router, and then I pinched the entire router into my vise, and now I have a nice metal router with a table to work with. And it's perfect for stuff like this, where I just want to very cleanly knock off these peaks and create a nice straight edge. It's much easier than trying to move the entire router around. Where'd my cam bolt go? What the heck? Oh, it's right in front of my face. Nice. It's perfect. Let's do that 3 more times. Love watching that work.
And we're gonna completely weld it on. Yeah, buddy. The cam stops are complete, so I decided to bolt everything together as kind of a little test fit before permanently welding them to the frame. And I decided there's a couple things I need to address before making them permanent. Number one, I accidentally welded the cam stops onto the wrong side of this tab. So I had to swap sides. This, currently mounted on the passenger side, was meant to be on the driver's side, and vice versa for the other side. Not a big deal, but I did shape those tabs to fit the frame perfectly, and so now they don't fit perfectly because they're technically on the wrong side. So I gotta refit them. Shouldn't be a big deal. Also, before permanently welding them on, I need to clean up the frame because getting rid of these welds is going to be pretty much impossible with the tabs in place. So I'm going to do that. And then on the passenger side, there's an oil filter housing that is getting really close to the front tab. All I'm going to do here is take this tab off and bend it about 45 degrees just to get it away from the oil filter housing. And if you notice, the sensor is extremely close to the frame rail. I'm not going to deal with that right now, but this is probably just going to be an elbow. And if that doesn't work, then I'll just create a little clearance hole in the frame. Not sure. I'm not going to worry about that right now. But after we do those couple things, I think this thing's going to be done. Because this tab is kind of positioned diagonally on the frame, I'm expecting to have to trim this down a little bit.
Mostly on the point.
I didn't measure, but I'm estimating about an 1/8 inch that needs to be removed. Come on, I bent it the wrong damn way. Are you serious? How hard is that? It's not hard at all. Well, let's see how brittle I can make this by bending it the opposite direction. That's better. You know what? I think I might do the same bend on the same tab on the opposite side, even though it doesn't need it. It just almost looks like maybe it would help with twisting forces and flexing, you know what I mean? There shouldn't be a whole lot of that because the rear bushing is gonna take the majority of the forces. I think this one will mainly be just pushing back and forth, so I don't know. Frame has been cleaned up and we are ready for the final install and welding on these tabs. And this time I'm going to assemble them in front of you and I'm going to explain every single part and what its purpose is, because this is part 2. We already went over all this when I did the rear bushings, but man, a whole bunch of people have joined GarageFab since we last did that episode with those bushings. So we're just gonna quickly review it all. In the end of these control arms, we have aluminum mock-up bushings. These mock-up bushings are the same dimensions as the polyurethane bushing that's going to go in there. The purpose is so that you can build the entire suspension setup with the bushings in place. You can weld on them without worrying about melting the polyurethane. This entire front suspension so far has been built using these mock-up bushings. We have the cam bolt. This is just a regular, but with a cam attached to it, off center, and that cam rides on the stops that we created on our tabs earlier. So when you turn the bolt, it forces the shank of the bolt to move side to side, pulling the control arm in, pushing it out, which changes camber, caster if you change both the front and rear bushings in opposite directions. This was intended to make up for any of the mistakes I made and inaccuracies. So we'll see how that goes. Now, because this has a long oval hole, this would likely destroy the polyurethane bushing once tightened up against there. The polyurethane bushing is going to move around a little bit and probably get all chewed up, not to mention the center sleeve that goes through the middle of the bushing, which I don't have at the moment, has a much better chance of working its way through this hole. And once that happens, everything is useless. If you saw my bushing video, you know that center sleeve is supposed to be locked into place as if it's a solid part of the chassis, and then the bushings rotate around that tube. So again, because this is a long oval hole, it can't tighten down properly on that solid tube, and the large hole could potentially mess up the sides of the bushing. So I added some 1/4-inch coins. This serves two purposes. One, obviously, it covers up that oval hole. It also supports the entire side of the bushing. It's smooth, so that it won't damage the bushing. And lastly, the hole in it is so small that only the bolt can go through it. The sleeve that goes through the bushing cannot go through there. So the metal sleeve is going to get tightened between this coin and the coin on the other side. What that coin looks like on the other side
as it adjusts, it just keeps this oval hole completely covered at all times. There it is. I'm going to tighten down these cam bolts and we'll be ready to weld on these tabs. Does everybody remember Marcus? Marcus was a viewer that asked me if I needed assistance with anything. He had a plasma table and I said, yes, I need a whole bunch of these washers for this purpose. And he went ahead and created a whole bunch of them for me. I still have an entire bucket full. And I am still using them. And I'm using them on things other than bushings, which is what I originally needed them for. I use them for bed leveling spacers. I'm sure there's several other things I've used them on, but I can't think of it right now. So, again, thank you, Marcus. Everybody say thank you, Marcus. I haven't talked to you in a while, Marcus. Where you been? Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, that hurts my heart. Remember a little bit ago, I was talking about how I welded these stops on the wrong side of one of these tabs. And so I had to swap sides in order to make them work. And now I have a pretty decent sized gap that I have to fill with weld. It's not that bad. It's just frustrating because it was absolutely perfect. And now it's not. I don't have a lot of skill, but filling gaps might be considered one of them, probably because I have to do it so much.
The front control arms are completely mounted. It's ready to be aligned. Okay, well, maybe the alignment will have to wait, but we are ready to mount some air springs. While we were at it, we clearanced out the frame rail for the AC compressor. That reminds me, I kind of want to attach the AC compressor just to see what that looks like. Oh, it's so nice. I mentioned earlier that this style engine mount doesn't allow a whole lot of engine movement. I hope I'm not lying because, wow, there's not a whole lot of clearance between the compressor and the frame rail, but I really think that's gonna be okay. And last but not least, we got rid of that pesky water softener and got a fancy new storage system that won't hold water. So now I've got to frantically get to work on that whole house AC issue because soon enough, it's gonna go out permanently and we're gonna be in hot water, or at least a really hot house. So if you too are going through a rough time, man, I'm sorry, I feel you. This too shall pass, and you just gotta keep moving forward. All right, guys, I'll see you later.